Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and my very special guest today is Shadi Gholizadeh. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kim.
And so we're going to talk about the loneliness crisis among older adults. And you have a lot of experience in this sort of thing. Is that correct?
That's right. I'm a clinical psychologist and I also work for a large home care company. So it's unfortunately an issue that I do see a lot.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We see it a lot in my practice as well. And so, but let's kind of talk about some of the things that you're seeing that are going on. And so in what you're seeing in your communities, how prevalent is it an issue in loneliness among older adults?
Loneliness is a big issue. It's always been a big issue, but I think after the pandemic, it became more front and center. So I think a lot of people are hearing about loneliness now, the health impacts of loneliness. It's important to distinguish between social isolation and loneliness. They're both important public health issues. So loneliness is more of that subjective feeling. I feel like I'm disconnected. I wish I had more contacts than I do. I wish I had more opportunities to engage than I do. Isolation is more of an objective. There aren't too many people around me. I don't have people who I can engage with. I don't have opportunities to engage. And it's important because both are big issues, right? But you can be socially isolated and not feel lonely, or you can be you can have many social contacts all around you. You can live in a big bustling community, lots of people, lots of activities, and you still feel lonely because maybe you've never really liked groups, you haven't found your crew, you don't really like the activities that are offered. And so they're both really big issues today, unfortunately.
So what do y'all see are the common signs and symptoms of loneliness in older adults?
It can vary. And what's important is to kind of look at the person's baseline. So if someone, they've always been a homebody, they haven't really liked to go out too much, that's going to look very different than someone who was always very social butterfly, planning things all the time, engaged in all sorts of committees and lots of friends. So you do want to look at where someone generally started. But if we were going to generalize, withdrawal is the biggest one, right? So someone who starts saying, don't bring the grandkids over, actually, or I'm going to need to cancel, and they keep canceling. Let's say someone who used to love to go to Rotary meetings who just stops going. So the withdrawal is one of the biggest signs, but also some of the physical, more subtle signs, things that can look like depression, changes in appetite, changes in mood, feelings of hopelessness. People can talk about, sometimes feelings of being a burden. I don't want you to come all the way out here. It's too hard. You have the kids. Don't worry about it. And over time, that behavior then pulls the person out even more. And so it's this vicious cycle where then the loneliness starts getting worse and worse, and they're reducing the opportunities that they would have to engage.
And so if you have a person that is basically suffering from loneliness, what are some of the health impacts? How does it affect their body? If they have long periods of loneliness.
There has been a lot of research looking at this, and so again, they've looked at both loneliness and isolation. Both have pretty profound negative physical, mood, cognitive impacts. So there was one study saying that the effects of prolonged loneliness are as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
That's how impactful it is to someone's health. And that's important because sometimes loneliness can feel a little fuzzy for some people. They feel like it's too, that's okay. I'm physically okay. I don't need to bother my family with that piece of it. But it's just as important, and it's because we know, so research tells us that prolonged long-term loneliness can lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, higher risk of death, cognitive decline, dementia, all sorts of different morbidities. And so it's not a small issue. It's not just a fuzzy issue. It's not just a feel good issue. It's a really serious public health concern. And the pandemic, unfortunately, brought it to light. But I guess if there was one good thing, it's that a lot of people now are aware of how big of an issue this is for older adults, and not just that it doesn't feel good, that it's actually really not good for you.
Yeah, there's very few things the pandemic did, but a lot of the things that we find with seniors really kind of benefited from having the issues that they did, unfortunately, because now people are way more aware of what's going on, and than they were before, because a lot of times nobody even talked about it, so that made it even worse. So nobody knew. So, how does dementia compound the challenges of loneliness in older adults?
So this one's interesting because it's bi-directional. So dementia can make loneliness worse. Loneliness has been shown to be associated with higher risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. So dementia, if you have dementia, you can imagine that there are all sorts of reasons why your social contacts around you might start to diminish. So oftentimes there's stigma. People don't know how to interact anymore. So this might have been a really close friend of decades. And they feel like, I don't know, it's awkward now. I don't know what to talk about. The person seems irritable. I don't want to stress them out. So I'm just going to stop showing up. And that actually make things much worse. So people still want to see the people who they love and care about, even if they might not show it in the same way. So there's just that really real stigma piece that when people have dementia, a lot of their social contacts, because they don't know how to interact with people who have dementia, stop showing up. And also their, obviously mobility changes, all sorts of reasons why someone might just not be able to do the activities that they used to do. And so the Rotary example I gave, we see things like that a lot, where someone that might have been their main kind of the cornerstone of their social life is this club that they've been going to for many, many years, or some service or a place of worship. And they stop going because of the dementia. So changes in memory or concentration or focus, they're just having a hard time following. And this is making them really frustrated. So they're like, I'm just not going to go. Right? I don't want to show up anymore. And people, they want to be respectful. They want to give the person space. They don't ask too many questions. But again, that just ends up making the loneliness worse. But then we also know there's research that prolonged loneliness is a risk factor for dementia and cognitive decline. Huge increased risk of dementia for people who have experienced loneliness for a long time. And there are parts of the brain that are involved in emotion regulation and processing of emotions and interaction. So if you're not putting yourself in a position to be flexing those cognitive muscles, they're going to start to deteriorate after a while. And so that's why it's really important to have really strong sense of, I have at least an opportunity for social connection. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm having to do things every single day. Of course, we all have days where we just want to kind of chill out and take a day off, but the opportunities should be there so that when the person wants to interact, they have all sorts of different avenues where they can do that.
So for those friends and or family, let's talk about just real quick family. Let me kind of digress just a minute. I want to talk about this particular subject a little more. What advice do you give, maybe family members for friends of their loved ones that it has the dementia, to kind of help them stay connected, to keep coming? What kind of advice do you offer them to say, hey, here's some things you can do, and I still want you to be there for my mom or dad or whatever, still want you to visit, and here's some helpful things you can do?
Regular visits, no matter how brief, right? So if you feel like a really long visit right now is kind of stressful for the person, or various dynamics make that difficult, still having some sort of consistent regular visits that the person can expect, knows that they're coming, that gives forward to in the week. There's been a lot of research showing the importance of intergenerational connections. And I've seen some families really navigate this beautifully, where it might look like you have a busy mom. She has a few kids, right? And she's like, how do I fill up the weekend? I need to keep the kids busy. It's hard for me to leave them so I can go and visit mom. well, don't leave them, right? Come up with an activity you can all do together. And oftentimes, even with dementia, cognitive decline, actually, people who are living with dementia often are able to interact really well with children, with animals. So it's like, bring them, bring the pets, bring the kids. And I've seen families, again, do this beautifully, where they'll have some sort of low mess, easy art project, the kind of painting where it's just with water or something, or have an activity where everyone's engaged. And so that's something that I always recommend. Also using technology. So I know technology has gotten a bad rap with loneliness, and people just have their heads in their phones. But for a lot of older adults, especially if they're isolated, if family lives really far away, the kids are in school, so it's hard for them to see the grandparents on a consistent basis. Having FaceTime, having these kinds of interactions can be really helpful. And there are, I've heard sometimes too, well, my mom can't use FaceTime, or it's frustrating for her. There are all sorts of resources online to help teach that technology. I know that a lot of times in the Apple store, they have classes specifically for older adults that, will kind of walk them through. And I've had older adults say that itself was a fun activity for me. I kind of like that class. I'm going to keep going. I want to learn how to do more things with my phone. So finding ways to integrate technology into day-to-day life. And also, I think just being aware of the fact that a lot of times what prevents older adults from reaching out is they don't want to feel like a burden. They see how busy their adult children are, and they don't want to add to that. And so you might have to be the one to reach out. Or even if, you say, well, dad doesn't seem like he wants to hang out, he's always saying no. Well, maybe he doesn't want to burden you. So still try to find a way to show up and to just show that, hey, I'm here, I'm available, and we love having you around. We love seeing you. We like hanging out.
Yeah, I think that's important. And so, in order to do that, my grandmother, I used to call her every day. So if I didn't see her, I
Yeah.
definitely call her. So always, and then
There's
talk to her over
nowhere
the
to
phone.
go.
And so, yeah, I missed the phones where they were still attached to the wall, kind of thing. So, 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 what kind of advice would you give to an older adult, that maybe listening to our podcast that might be feeling a little lonely? What kind of advice would you tell them to kind of help get through that process?
Well, I think the first thing is for older adults to know that they're not alone. So research has shown that, up to a third of older adults feel lonely in today's society. So you're definitely not alone. There are a lot of people who feel lonely and isolated. And there are steps that you can take to reconnect. Even if for various reasons you've become disconnected, it doesn't mean that life has to look like this forever. And so the advice would be to first kind of do an inventory of, and how am I feeling? Let me be open to it. And sometimes it's hard when you ask someone, are you lonely? They're like, well, I don't know, compared to what? Other people have it worse off, or, so it's hard for them to gauge. There is a screening measure. It's called the UCLA Loneliness Scale. There are different versions of it, but there's a 3-item version online that's pretty good. And so it asks, how often do you feel like you lack companionship? How often do you feel left out? How often do you feel isolated from others? And you kind of rank each of those questions and you get a number. And based on that number, it'll tell you, yeah, it's a screening measure. So it's not going to diagnose anything, but it'll tell you, yeah, you're someone who might be at higher risk of loneliness. And so it's worth checking out. So for people who are just curious, that measure does exist. But the advice would be to start small. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't feel like you have to sign up for a bunch of groups or do things that are out of your comfort zone. Just taking little baby steps, knowing that other people around you in your community are also probably feeling the same way. So again, whether it's reconnecting with friends, family, people you already know, whether it's starting up new connections in the community. An important aspect of this that we didn't touch on yet is that, a lot of times loneliness in older adults is associated with grief. There's been a loss. And so there's that emotional pain as well. There are other people in the community who are also grieving, who also would benefit from renewed social contacts and engagement. And so I think there's a lot that can happen. There are all sorts of clubs and groups. There are all sorts of ways to find like-minded people now. And if you need help, that itself can be a great opportunity. Reach out to a grandkid and say, can you find me? I want to take a gardening class. Can you find me one? And that often also gives family members who want to help but don't know how a way to do something to help you out.
So that's perfect. And because my grandkids are still little, and but still, there are some things that they had to teach me still today. I still learn new things on my phone that I didn't know. And I think I'm pretty savvy, but then I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, here's how you do it. And so it's amazing how early they learn to do things. And so Shadi, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
So I work for The Key. It's a large home care company all over North America. So you can check out thekey.com. My email is shadi@thekey.com, and I'm always happy to help. No matter where you are, we probably have someone close to you in one of our offices. And so we're happy to touch base and talk about how caregiver or someone else can come to help out with some feelings of loneliness or wanting more social connection day to day.
Perfect. And so I just want to thank you so much for being on the show today, because it's always good information. Because we have, I mean, I've seen those clients come in the door, that have, been home for a while, and I do my best to have those conversations with them. Are you doing anything? Do you get out of the house? Is it, to try to see if, maybe living at home, if they've lost a loved one, may not be the most ideal thing anymore, because because now they are feeling real isolated because they don't have that companionship. So I just want to thank you again so much for being on the show, and we look forward to having you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for all the work that you do, Kim.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.